we are live and we are recording a new show for the Cindy Rushton Show. And you guys, there are times I get excited, and then there's times I get just stinking excited. And today is one of my stinking excited days because I am welcoming one of the people who has truly impacted my life, not just because he was my boss man for about a year, a little over a year, but also there's people that are in your life, and it's not just for what you think they're there for. It's because they're there for your next steps. And Tyler is just that. Tyler Krause is
It's too kind, Cindy.
he's joining me this morning. We're going to talk about business, and we're going to talk about ministry and websites, SEO, and who knows what else, because I know how we get. And
That's
I'm going to be mindful of his time. But you guys, I just want to welcome you guys to the new show. If you are on Facebook, first of all, I want to shout out to you because maybe you haven't heard, I'm doing a podcast. And I want to invite you guys to look me up. I'm on all your favorite places for podcasting. So you can find me in Audible and Stitcher and Apple Podcast. Oh, let me go on and on. Well, I'm not going to take that time. I'm just going to invite you to look up the Cindy Rushton Show and follow me. Guess what? This show, I just released episode 18. So by the time this comes out, we'll be on episode 20. And I just want to invite you to come and join me because we talk about all things that empower and encourage you to be able to get your message out there and reach the world with that awesome message you have. And so today, I'm so excited again to be welcoming Tyler Krause. He is the CEO. SEO. I almost said SEO. Did you hear that?
I don't know.
From Conversion First Marketing. He is a husband of an amazing, awesome woman that I actually had worked with her as well. And she's a worship leader, but he's a worship leader. They're parents. Yeah. He's a dad to the cutest children. Like I'm talking about, they are right up there with my grandchildren. And
We've been locked in a house with them for 7 days. So they're testing that beauty. They're testing that that cuteness because with the snowstorms going on right now, it's been like, we need to have a talk, everybody. We've been at this house for 7 days. So anyways, I appreciate it. Yeah.
You're about to be done, kids. You're about to be done. I'm telling you. Watch the parents. But he has got the cutest kids. They are just awesome. He is, by the way, you guys, an SEO expert, and I could brag on him big because I've watched what he does to websites. I've seen websites that were being redesigned from an SEO perspective. And I'm telling you guys that SEO design has brought people in Nashville who were lawyers, who were construction companies. They were realtors. Any realtor out there, I have a lot of you that follow me. Seriously, he brought their websites to page one on Google. And I know he could tell us more about that. But when I see that, I know how impossible that kind of work is in this day and time with so many voices, but he's the dude. And so he's a marketing expert and, of course, the biz owner of Conversion First Marketing. So welcome, Tyler.
Thank you, Cindy. Can I tell you the quickest story off of that? I don't want to take you off script, but the quickest story off that is I literally just got off a call with my mom of all folks and right before this podcast. And my mom has been running a small bed and breakfast style thing for the last several years. And we've looked at her site for years and very much a cobbler's shoes sort of issue. We just, didn't get around to like redesigning the site. It was kind of going okay and everything. So last year, she finally let us redesign the site. I mean, by last year, I mean like 6 months ago. We redesigned the site from an SEO first perspective. And just to give everybody an understanding of kind of like what we do and how we do it, I literally just got off a call with my mom. And she was like, Tyler, I have more bookings for this year than I have ever had. And it's happened we just did her, like Erin just did her 30-day or 90-day review. I can't remember which one it was. Wow. But the turnaround has been huge impact instantly. And we were joking to be like, why'd you wait so long to let me redesign this? And she's like, why'd you wait so long to redesign your mother's site, Tyler? Well, like pick it up. pick it up there, son. And so,
Oh,
yeah. So anyways, it was fantastic.
funny.
And her are through the roof. That's what we do.
Oh, I love it, and oh,
Yeah.
wow. Well, mom, I'm glad you let him do this. Your business will never be the
Yeah.
same. Oh, man, talk about business.
Yeah.
Okay, Tyler, I wanna take us back
Yeah.
in time, and I wanna ask you,
Yeah.
how did you take a leap into business? Because that's really,
Yeah.
really a challenge for many people.
Oh man, yeah. So I'll try to make this story quick, but it really starts. I was always doing ministry or business, one of them full time. So I would imagine some of your listeners too, where it's like you find yourself either kind of in one vein or the other. And really, all of them are about serving people and helping people. I mean, ministry does that, but business absolutely does that in different ways, but it's so similar. And so I had kind of a passion for people in both venues, and I was a full-time worship and youth pastor. I resigned from that position and and was kind of looking for the next church to go into, and felt like the Lord really called us into this tiny church plant. They could pay us $600 a month. It was nothing, and my full-time job was ministry before that, and so I had to figure out what to do. And I had this 16-year-old. This is where, like, okay, I'll yeah, there's so much in this that's just so valuable. But
Feel
the
free.
like sometimes your answer comes from the most unlikely places, because I was 5 months into a worship leader search, and we had actually turned down some good positions, and because we just felt like those were not the where we needed to be. We are going to walk right into the same situation we just left. And I had a 16-year-old kid come up. We were leading worship for this little youth worship ministry, that was this community thing or whatnot. I had the 16-year-old come up to me and say, "Hey, do you want to start a lawn care company with me?" Well, actually, he didn't even lead with that. He led with, "Hey, I heard you can't get a job." And, yeah, so it was like, not your best way to start this, but I've got offers. Okay. I'll be all right. But, but he was like, "Do you want to start a lawn care company with me?" And I was like, "Oh man, dude, I'm flattered, because that's nice and everything, but I don't think my options have sunk so low to starting a lawn care company with a 16-year-old kid in my youth group." But that's nice. And he looked at me and he said something I'll never ever forget. And uh, he said, "Well, if you'll start a lawn care company with me, I can get us number one on Google." And
Wow.
I literally looked back at him and I was like, "That's a thing." That's like a thing you can do. You can get to number one on Google. You can make yourself do. I was completely unaware of the industry and how websites worked and how SEO worked and everything. And much to my wife's chagrin, I basically was like, "If you can do that, I'll start a lawn care company with you." I was like, "If you can really get us number one." And and he was like, "Yeah, all you got to do is buy some links," which was the way you did it back in 2010, back in the day. So we started a lawn care company. That was my jump into business. And so honestly, it took a huge kind of leap of faith aspect. We love this church we are going to, couldn't make any money there, jumped into business and got to hustling. And 3 years later, we were able to sell that company, and I fell in love with my passion, which is now. And I looked at my wife 3 years later, and I was like, "I think I want to go into web development, marketing, and SEO. I think I could love doing this for the next 10, 15 years." And it just took a 16-year-old kid asking me that question, taking
I
a leap of faith.
Oh man, you
Yeah.
talk about loving that, because it's truly most businesses have a story, and they have that person who believed in
Yeah.
us, and I love that. I think it's awesome. Well, let me ask you, why did
Yeah.
you take the turn to SEO? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great question for us to know here.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started that lawn care company, this was in 2010. Yellow Pages was dying very quickly, or their business model was going out the door. Mobile wasn't the thing it is yet, and everything was moving to kind of desktop searches, especially for local service business types, or if you have some sort of direct, like an urgency issue, right? If your heat is off in the middle of an unprecedented snowstorm in the south here, you're calling an HVAC guy, and you need a guy right now. And so that whole market was just exploding, and we were part of that as a service business, and turned away about 40% of our leads every year. Now, unfortunately, I started a lawn care company I started a lawn care company right in the middle of 3 years of perpetual drought out in Colorado. And we were having forest fires, and it was just a terrible time to start a lawn care company. But in the summer, when the getting was good, we would turn away our leads. And I didn't have a huge passion for grass, but I did just love, like, it. I had a kind of a knack for this kind of what I would call trust-based marketing. And once we found the traffic source that was SEO, it was like, this is arguably one of the most powerful things a small business could do. And I just fell in love with the passion of trying to figure it out, because I like hacking to figure out what's possible in the middle. And SEO is just, it's always changing, and so there's always kind of a passion center there. But once you figure out how to get some wins, and it's a little bit addicting as a niche. So that's why I love it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, so this month, one of our focuses in our community is taking your next step. And for many
Yeah.
of our community members, their next step is building a website or revamping their website. Maybe they've had their
Yeah.
website, you know, how websites get outdated, or they're just not representing them well. So if someone wanted to build and optimize their website, what do you really feel like would be very important for them to remember other than hiring you? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, there's absolutely. So my first websites were built on Weebly and Wix. So I got my start just like everybody else did.
Mhm,
I hope. And honestly, it's such a low cost option. One of the first things for your do-it-yourselfers, go grab a Squarespace, a Wix, or a Weebly, and just put something together. Like, just go figure it out, because it's one of those niches where an hour on YouTube or a couple hours on YouTube in an
yeah,
afternoon pulling together kind of your basic site, understanding, like, you'll discover tools in there like canva.com, which you can use to make graphics really simply. And you'll just kind of stretch and figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to say about it for brand new folks.
mhm,
It's a great place to start, and that can handle kind of those initial days as you're just trying to communicate those kind of bare messages
mhm,
and everything. Now, as far as like, if you were an established business or something like that, so I'm the creator of a thing that we now call the SEO first website design process. And it's literally just a process that puts SEO at the forefront of it. And let me just explain really quickly why we think that's really valuable, and indirectly why I think you should do it this way. So a lot of us think that our websites are for people, but the most important relationship that your website has is actually with other robots. It's with other computers, or it's with other websites. So Google being the most important one. So Google is, no matter who you are, Google is probably going to drive um, over 50% of your traffic is going to come from Google. So when you get somebody to your website, like, web traffic doesn't come out of nowhere. It follows very, very predictable paths. And so it's either people are typing in your website directly,
mhm,
or they are clicking a link on somebody else's website. That, unless you have an app on somebody's phone, that those are the ways that people get to your website. And so when you think about it that way, you realize that the gateways to your site are as important or more important than what happens when people actually get to there. Now, I don't want to like throw away how important design can be after that, but what people throw away is they just figure if you build it, then you got an uphill battle of driving traffic to it. And so
mhm,
the SEO first process is basically saying when it comes to the sitemap level of your site, doing keyword research and understanding, we use this term called the names of things. Like, sometimes we call our courses, like, you know, uh the greatest recharge course of all time, sort of thing. Google has no idea what your recharge course is. It might think you're a battery company for all they know, because
true.
Google's taking right. Google's taking the keyword, taking the word recharging and going, okay, I know what recharging means. Recharging is usually used in the sphere of tech and all this sort of stuff. And so now, if you want to go like the super opposite and be really descriptive, to be like, the course is just laden with keywords of like restructuring your life or restructuring your business course. That's not as malleable from a design perspective. And so the SEO first is really about finding that balance, find where the keyword volume is,
Mhm.
and you can use a number of tools. There's a number of free tools online. You can just try to find and nail down where your keyword volume is, and then dedicating part of your site to making sure that you're addressing what those keyword groups are. So as you go to build, right, you can build your cool courses, but a great example would be take your recharge course, for example, and let's say it's really just business coaching is what it is. Well, Google knows exactly what business coaching is. It
Mhm.
has a massive database and understands business coaching. And so as part of your build process, thinking to yourself, okay, what does Google describe what I'm doing? And then making sure that you're incorporating that as part of your design early on. Page structure becomes really important, and laying that foundation. What we have found, I mean, this is what we just did with my mom's site, which is by the sound of it, you'd think maybe my mom's my only customer sort of thing, but this is just the most recent one where
His mom is not his only customer. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Right. But we just did this with her. She had 8 years of a site that was not built with SEO in mind.
Yeah.
And so we redesigned it from that SEO perspective. And again, keyword making the names of things. She's a retreat center in southern Minnesota. And so understanding that Google knows what a retreat center in southern Minnesota is, and making sure that that keyword makes it to the right places on pages, makes it to the sitemap structure. So there's actually a page about retreat centers in southern Minnesota. That's what Google needs in order for your site, for it to go like, oh, somebody's doing a search for that thing.
Mhm.
Here's a site that has done really great demonstrating that they're all about that thing. And as soon as we did it, I mean, the site just went straight up in keyword rankings. And now the traffic's flowing because of that. And so, established business folks who are looking to redesign here, you can go with Wix. I know this is the longest answer, but you
No,
knew
it's a
this.
perfect answer. I love it. Thank you.
Okay, you knew this about me before, so it's so like
This is
long,
why I asked. I did my ask.
long. That's right. Long-winded answers are my specialty. So if you're taking that Wix site, because what's going to happen from a Wix site situation is you're probably just going to grab the pages that come to mind from a user experience.
Mhm.
That's great. That's important. So do that. But then as you're starting to move into more sophistication, at some point you need to go do the keyword research, and you need to understand what Google thinks about the services you're trying to provide.
Mhm.
And one of the most powerful tools is to go create an AdWords account, set up a small spend with AdWords, and you can get access to their keyword planning tool.
Mhm.
Anything that you need to know from Google from a keyword research perspective, there's so many trainings on the keyword planning tool. In an afternoon, you can have a good understanding of what Google thinks about your business
Mhm.
and what they think about the services that you provide. And then you can use that information to start the process of making your site from that Google perspective. And Google's just one of them. Then Facebook has traffic and Instagram has traffic. I know if you've got a lot of social, think about those traffic sources and
Mhm.
find ways that your website it plays nice with Instagram, plays nice with Facebook, because how people get to you and the speed of that user experience is as important as what they do once they get to their site. And that's the part we find is largely ignored. And it's why we honestly have carved a niche out in the market to just
Mhm.
address it from that perspective.
Oh, very, very, very helpful. And by the way, you guys, if you are needing some help even with setting up your website, we are having a website in a weekend coming up in another week. And I really want to encourage you guys to be a part of that. Some of you who did Jumpstart 2021, and if you didn't, hey, it's not too late to jumpstart your 2021.
Sure.
If it were December, it's not too late. Is that
That's
like
right.
a big say? Is that something big? Well, here's the deal, because in there we do all that background stuff of getting to know who you are and what you're here for. And that's going to be important when you do what Tyler just was sharing. Okay, now back
Yeah.
in on out away from websites. I want to go back into like business overall, because one of the things
Yeah.
that I particularly valued as your one of your employees for that beautiful season, um, and I've told you this before, but I remember my first job way back many years ago. My boss poured into me, and he taught me something I will never, ever forget, because I remember being overwhelmed learning all the things about dentistry. Bless my heart. It was so
Yeah, right.
overwhelming. And I remember he asked me, he said, "How are things going? What are you thinking? How, is there something I can help you with?" And I said, "I just feel a little overwhelmed. There's just so much to know." And he said,
Yeah,
"Cindy, if you could learn just one thing a day, in the
that's right.
course of a week, you're going to know 7 new things. At the end of a month, 31. At the end of a year, 365, and you can probably take my job." And of course, now I've never had any ambitions for that, but I will never forget that moment. Well, fast forward, when I was working for you, I'd already had my own business. I've helped build several multi-million dollar businesses. I've been in corporate world. I've done many other things. But working for you, one of the things I felt like God used as a next for me was showing me the value of our core values, and how that lines up with everything from finding
Yeah,
your tribe, to
yeah.
finding people that work with you, to communicating what you're even about. So, do you mind if we
Yeah.
tap in, and I ask you, like, why are core values so important? What are yours, and how does that play out? Do you mind answering that?
Yeah.
That's a big question too.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. No, I would just say I feel like it's probably an overstatement, but I would just implore all the business owners that are listening in. If you are operating your company without a cultural set of standards, you are leaving probably the greatest tool of your personal fulfillment in your company off the table. And and I'll unpack that. I'll try to justify that a little bit. So, but the core values, some people, core values gets used a lot. What it really is you're setting a cultural standard along with a skills standard in your company. And it is really tempting when you start to look through this lens. Let me tell you the opposite. It's really tempting at first to
Mhm.
hire people based on the skill sets that they provide, who's available, who's around, who's around, who knows somebody. Like how often do we hire folks based on, like, well, somebody knew them and they kind of fit. And I didn't have a measuring stick to measure the cultural fit of that individual to myself and to my company before. We just did a skills assessment, which we do all the time. So I want to be super ultra clear to make sure that when people talk about cultural assessment, I'm not talking about, of course, anything related to race or religion or anything like that. That's not what this is for. Inside of any of those larger brackets, right, of identity and culture and history and everything are things like one of our core values is friendly by default. And
Mhm.
so we always said Cindy Rushton is probably our poster child for friendly by default. If you've ever spent time with you, Cindy, you just know. And what we say with that is we treat clients and each other like friends. And somebody who's kind of friendly as a default status.
Mhm.
And I tell my team all the time, that if you like, one of the fastest ways to run into an issue with me in leadership is actually not missing your goals from, like, trying to produce something. It's if I find or see or catch catch is probably the wrong word, somebody violating a friendly by default. Or another one is kindness and conflict is another one of ours. So
Mhm.
kindness and conflict is like, conflict happens, but you cannot violate. Kindness is a choice. Conflict will happen. No way around it. But
Mhm.
kindness and conflict is absolutely a choice that we can make. And if you violate kindness and conflict, that's the shortest way to the door in my company. Now, what happens when you do that is suddenly, even if we're not perfect at it, suddenly everybody has a standard that they can go, like, hey, I'm striving to achieve this. I want to be this more at the very least, not less. And it covers a lot of gray areas of, like, hey, was this behavior inappropriate or not appropriate? Well, was it kind? Kind is like, you feel kindness, like, kindness when you're
Mhm.
like, I understand you had a conflict, but it seemed like really in the midst of that you got mean and you got nasty. And it's like, you probably didn't violate any official policies that we have, but we all understand that that's off the mark that we're trying to hit. And when you set that
Yeah.
cultural standard like that, it's just so revolutionary. And so for me personally, like, I'll tell you, I was terrible at hiring folks. I didn't realize this about myself. I was about 4 years into business, and we'd pulled together a team, about 4 or 5 folks, and I was going through those classic scaling issues that a lot of folks go through. And we just had kind of some massive turnover. We were driving back from Florida, and I was telling all the problems we were having to my wife. And she just looked at me and she was like, "Tyler, I think you have to call it. I think you're bad at hiring people. You're terrible at this." And I was,
Thank you.
yeah, right. Yeah, and inside I was like, you take a breath to start to defend yourself, and then you're like, I think I have to admit I'm really bad at this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us bring in the best of intentions to that, but
Mhm.
we're not understanding what we're missing. And so I went on about a 6 or 8 week journey, and I begged the people that were still with me to work their buns off while I was like, I can't hire somebody until I figure out why I'm doing this so wrong.
Mhm.
And core values was my solution to that. I realized that I was vetting on a skills basis only, and not also vetting by a set of cultural standards that we all agreed on. So in literally a weekend, I came up with our 5 core values, and it has been one of the catalysts for the change that we've seen. And I would put it as important as the product that we provide. Like, the product is really powerful, but at this point, I could change products, and core values would keep us straight. So
Ooh, that's really, really, really good. Okay, so give us an idea of what those core values are for your company.
yeah, yeah. So we have 5 or 6. And one of the key ones from a marketing perspective is ROI is the KPI.
Mhm.
So we talk about that one all the time, like celebrating with clients. We do it almost on a weekly basis to be like, what are our wins? What are we hearing? Not only from clients, like keyword rankings and organic traffic are leading indicators,
Mhm.
but return on investment is the only reason we get hired ever.
Right.
Everybody who spends $1 with us is hoping to get that dollar back, or 2 or 3.
Mhm.
And so return on investment is the key performance indicator for our company. Another one is friendly by default. Uh, and I've kind of already talked about that one. Another one from a cultural perspective is just kindness and conflict.
Mhm.
And that has to start at the top. So the one thing I would tell folks is make sure that you are not writing core values. 2 things. If you're going to write your core values to something you don't feel you are, but you're aspiring to be, then you need to be honest about that aspiration,
Mhm.
because you'll gut your core values. You'll gut your people's trust in your core values if you are the one violating them most often.
Wow,
Um,
that's good.
and
I just read that in school last night. Thank you. Very
nice.
good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, credit to whoever I just plagiarized then, because
No,
somebody.
no, no. I think that's probably a good God idea because, they were talking
Yeah,
about moral authority. If we
yeah,
basically don't practice what we preach, then people really don't respect and they don't get behind our vision.
yeah,
So that's exactly what you're saying here. That's good.
yeah. Yeah, so sorry, the summary is bad. So ROI is KPI, friendly by default, committed to personal growth is a key one.
Mm. Mhm.
And then failing forward,
Mhm.
which is an interesting one. And then honesty and integrity, which honesty and integrity is the needs to be in probably just everybody's blanket core value list. But in the SEO world, especially,
Yeah.
trust is all we have. Like, we've got a smoke and mirrors industry. Who knows how SEO works? Even the SEO professionals are unsure about that at some point, at certain points. When Google does an algorithm update, everybody in the world except Google is universally in the dark until we figure out what Google changed. And so, in an SEO company, especially, honesty and integrity is all we have. We have to build trust and care. And that's where ROI is the KPI comes in, where you go,
Mhm.
can you trust our integrity on your return on investment as our primary goal? It makes that really important. So, but there's one other one here, if I can vamp for just another couple of seconds,
Oh,
which
yes,
is
please. Yeah.
failing forward. Or I've flirted with 2 different. Taking smart steps forward is probably a
Mhm.
better way to say it, but I've often just called it failing forward.
Mhm.
And this is one of those things where this one has been absolutely critical, especially in the marketing world. You're constantly in discovery mode. I mean, you talked about, I don't know if it was on this call or right before it, you were talking about Clubhouse.
Mhm.
And Clubhouse is a brand new social media app that's audio only. And I'm not on it yet, but you cannot live in a world in which all of a sudden a whole new platform blows up. It's a whole new medium for connection overnight. I mean, you just have these ideas come in overnight. We've got Bitcoin and cryptocurrency coming. Like, just what is that going to do to our whole market for the next 10 or 15 years as a fundamental disruption? And if you do not give yourself permission to fail forward, like I spent 3 years building a mediocre lawn care company,
Mhm.
but and like most of us do, it took 3 years to kind of figure out just basics around
Yeah.
running a business. And so, and like we struggled, like we were able to sell the company, which was awesome. We built it to 6 figures, but it was a struggle. But it was that necessary growth season.
Mhm.
And even as we're hitting success metrics now, you have got to give yourself permission to fail, because if you give yourself permission to fail, then you give yourself permission to stay in the game. And if you stay in the game, then all of that failure experience builds up. And I know this isn't new ground for anybody, but I watch people again and again be
Mhm.
too afraid to take a leap on, or to like build that first website. That's why I said go on Wix and build your first website, because you're gonna suck at it. Like I could
Amen. You're going,
Amen.
okay, say that again and somebody soak that in, because I would say
Yeah.
whatever you do, your first steps are going to be totally sucking. And
Yeah,
people
that's
have
right.
got to know that, but that's how you get better and better. And I think that's, go ahead. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Say it again.
Yeah, no. Yeah, right. So go do it. And I tell usually when folks come in, for sure with a lawn care company before this one, which we would get a new guy on the crew, and I would look at him and I would just be like, no matter what your thought is for the first 2 weeks here, you're probably wrong. And it's not your fault. It's like you have to learn the way that we do it. I
Hmm.
know that you probably come in, like one guy came in and he was like a master with a trimmer. Okay. But he trimmed it differently than I wanted it to be trimmed. And so like he was out there with the weed whipper or whatnot. And I'd be like, I bet you were an absolute beast at your last lawn care company. But at this one, here's the standard that we're going for. And so now, and that's where the other core values of like kindness and conflict and friendly by default come in. Because
Hmm.
if you believe, if you are on a team and believe that failure is built into our success, then you know that you've got a safety net to land on
Hmm.
when you take a risk. And I try really hard to build that. And as a owner, there's a lot of owners out there that you are crushing the innovation that could happen in your company because you're too afraid to let go and let somebody else fail. Or when they fail, that becomes a confirmation of some kind in yourself that you should have never let that go to begin with. It's like,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I should have never let them do it. And in reality, that truth will keep you more stuck
Hmm.
than allowing somebody else to be bad at it for a little while,
Hmm.
and then falling back to understanding that failure is going to be a necessary part of this, especially when you start to scale, especially when you get outside yourself.
Oh, yeah, and there's no way to get outside of yourself without that particular value. I mean, and that
Yeah.
I call that more a mindset too, so that's pretty
Yeah.
powerful. I You guys, if you're just joining in, I just wanna say welcome to our show today. And today I am so delighted to have Tyler Krause from Conversion First Marketing here with me. Um, he- we are talking websites, business, ministry, SEO, and who knows what else we'll come up with. But okay, I want to go back and tap back in because I think you knew that one of the things that I believe is so necessary, and it kind of goes off of what you were just saying, but there's more to it there, is about keeping yourself learning and transforming and taking your next steps. And to
Yeah.
me, this is, if I were going to give one of my personal, I mean, like I guess it's this thing that compels me to continue growing, continue learning. It was why last night, and you'll be proud. Yes, I was on Clubhouse. I actually took a scary, like, I can't tell you how nervous I got being on
Sure.
Clubhouse, but I've been in like rooms and people pulled me to the stage, kind of messed my brain up because I was like, what do I say? How, am I doing it right?
Right.
But last night I decided, okay, I'm going to eat the frog and I'm going to moderate a room. And
Nice.
you want to talk about 2 hours before, I was like, what have I done? This is going to be
Right. Right.
crazy. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Have I been on here long enough? Blah, blah, blah. And we got
Yeah.
in there and I thought, well, we'll have an hour and we'll kind of get to know some people and just have some fun chatting. No, 6 hours later, we've had people that we had cried together. We had
Yeah.
prayed together. Everybody poured into one another. It was like the church in action. And I had to sit back. I got off there last night and I thought, I need to go to sleep. So
Yeah.
there's circles.
Right.
But there was a part of me that all I could do was just say, Lord, what are you doing for us today? Thank you that you're letting
Yeah.
me be a part of something new. And learning something new is not always easy, but
Yeah.
it's really essential. And I know you do that because of your business, but that's not, I think SEO is just a beautiful fit for you because you are a lifetime learner. And so without
Yeah.
putting more in your mouth, tell us a little
Yeah.
bit more about learning and you know why that would be one of your core values and what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's our committed to personal growth, which
Mhm.
the way we the way I phrase it is, you know, in our company, like if you're going to fit in our company, you have to love learning. And
Mhm.
we talk about it. We get excited. Like we're going to come into a meeting and we're going to be like talking about what books we're reading or where we're going with that. And it's that doing things better isn't just a professional thing. It's a
Mhm.
life thing.
Mhm.
And so we're looking for people when you're creating core values too, you're looking for people who it's like, I don't want you to become these things. I'm trying to find people who are these things. Somebody who I don't ever have to talk them into being like, what's the new book you're reading or when are you starting to read another book sort of thing. That's
Mhm.
just a thing we have in common. And that's where really strong cultures find that that unity underneath that. So I think when as far as personal growth goes and learning, I love reading. I'm going to give a caveat there. I love starting books. I'm terrible at finishing them. Uh, and so I have like a zillion books that I've started
Mhm.
and start reading through. But yeah, the learning aspect when it comes to like SEO, you have to have this hunger for that information. And right now there is more information available to all of us. Like we're sitting down to do an hour podcast where we get to share some of the insights that have helped make us different and better at
Mhm.
what we're doing. We've never had an easier way to find the best advice ever.
Yeah.
I would take the core value idea. That's not my idea. Like that came from a book called Traction. And a friend of mine, here's what committed to personal growth looks like. I was in a meeting where a friend who runs a marketing agency talked about hitting a ceiling at $1 million a year. And she was working around the clock. She couldn't figure out how. She had a good team. She had a great product. She's an incredible leader
Mhm.
and could not figure out how to not work 80 or 100 hours a week while trying to maintain this $1 million business. It happens all the time.
Right.
She said in this little 8-10 minute conversation, she just said, I just picked up this book called Traction in the midst of it, and it totally changed my life. I picked up my phone, I went on Amazon and I bought the book on the spot. By the end of the weekend, I had finished it. And by 2 weeks in, I had implemented at least something from that book. And that's probably the one big thing with that is we read a ton of books and we read a lot of stuff. And if we're honest, maybe 1% of it, maybe 5%, let's say 5 or 10%
Mhm.
of it actually gets implemented. And so I love I think one of the skill sets that I've had is and would encourage people to do is read until you get your first good aha moment and then write it down and get a plan to implement it. Put the book down
Yeah.
and go figure out how to implement that thing that you just learned. Because what's going to happen
Wow.
is what's going to happen is your brain's going to you're going to trick yourself. And I can't speak about brain construction at all, but I know mine tricks me. So I read that and I go, oh man, I circle it and I'm like, gosh, that is that is a huge idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 or 4 chapters in, I've got 50 ideas, and now I can't prioritize which one's going to actually be of highest value, because now it's like, oh man, I've got so many ideas I can start. I got so many different things that I can do, and so one of the biggest things I would say is one of the things that's led to success is we haven't 100% or perfectly implemented any one idea except for traction. I will say the EOS model is like our business Bible. And it is the one thing that I'll say, like every other idea has to fit into this framework, right? That's like scripture, where it's like all the
Yeah.
other things, you can add on personal growth stuff, you can add on podcasting, you can add all stuff, but like at the end of the day, you've got one authoritative source that you're
Yeah.
viewing the rest of it through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you'll build consistency with your team if you do that, by the way. So like EOS, you whether it's EOS or a different model,
Mm-hmm.
grab that model and say, we're going to have all kinds of candy come through the door. You could do this. Oh, here's a new way we should do hiring. Here's a new way we should do all this sort of stuff. We should do sales. This is a better product, all this sort of stuff. Commit to one operating system for your company and
Mm-hmm.
make sure all the other ideas get filtered through it. And traction just happens to be the one that saved my business and saved me and gave me that authoritative source that I can look at everybody and go, what does traction say about it? If it fits, great. Then let's figure out how to implement that kind of 1% idea. And you talked about learning one thing a day.
Yeah.
There's a book called Atomic Habits right
Yeah.
now that talks about the value of 1%. I think it's James Clear. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I have it around here somewhere. Is the author of that, and he talks about 1% improvements all the
Mm-hmm.
time, and so that's what I'm really talking about in the midst of the personal growth aspect is, if you get a book, you don't have to finish the whole thing, but if
Mm-hmm.
none of it gets implemented and actually makes it to a change in your daily life or life cycle or whatnot, then the learning just stays in your head. And SEO actually provided the perfect backdrop for me to get excellent at this habit, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a thing in SEO, and you're going to do this. If you go to start to do this, it's going to be analysis paralysis as you go through. There's so much information about SEO. What's the right choice to make?
Yeah.
And successful SEO implementation is about learning something, and the faster that you make sure that something is implemented, you'll shorten your learning curve significantly,
Mm-hmm.
because now you'll have real world experience with that effort. And so SEO just forced me to do that for years. And so now we do it with business aspects as well, and kind of life in general. And it's been really effective.
I love that. You know what's funny? The one thing I have complained about with my education has been having to finish every book.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
and it's how much I have to read every week, you know. However, the
Yeah.
one thing I have to say has been the benefit of me getting to meet some books and read some ideas that I truly feel like have made me a greater person. And you know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. But you know what I do? It's interesting. Going back to, I may finish those books, but every single one of them, inside the cover of the book, I'll write what my biggest takeaways are. And it may be
Oh,
one, it may
yeah.
be three, but then
Yep.
I even put the pages where there's a lot of information, like put the page number in there to where I can go back and I can find what really significantly impacted me. And I've had to make that a
Yeah.
discipline of mine, because otherwise I would have a resistance to finishing the books, or I would
Mhm.
never implement. And so I love,
Right.
I would say that if you don't have to finish a book, go for what Tyler's saying here, because you will really
Right.
own those books. You will really own those ideas. They'll really make a difference for you.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I have to know what you're reading right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, as far as what I'm reading right now, I mean, I have some of them literally uh, right here. So I
I
just
knew this,
started.
everybody. I knew this.
Yeah, you did. Sorry, they're always
I
they're
love
always
it.
waiting. And I just moved the stack over there. So I just started the one-page marketing plan, which I hadn't done. I hadn't done before. So like, true to the nature, I have a piece of paper in here. I'm about 2 chapters in, and I already have
Wow.
um Yeah, I've already got stuff that I'm like, oh, I don't have to go any further for a second year. Now, that's not to downplay what other people can do, but the one-page
Yeah.
marketing plan has been really good. Helps you think about offers and really your unique selling proposition,
Hmm.
which most of people's biggest mistake in marketing is actually their product and the structure that they have for the market, because they're not offering anything that's categorically unique, or better or different, or they haven't found a way to make that differentiation in the client's mind. And that's one of the big challenges. And there's ways to do that. Um, but I also, this is actually on recommendation of so I'm an SEO guy. If you want to learn about marketing quickly, this is the Google AdWords Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords, and it's
Yeah.
I think they just came out with the 6th edition. Gang, as an SEO guy, so I used to do PPC management. I now have a director of web development marketing services that does all of our PPC work, and he's amazing. But one of the beauties that is Google AdWords is you have this direct competition environment where you have like 35 characters to make your offer. You have 35 characters to get the click, right? And you've got a couple lines of that. I'm not technical on the specifics there, but when you have to distill your marketing ideas to that small of a space, and you're alongside of 4 other people on Google AdWords that are doing the same thing, those are the ads that are at the top of a Google search.
Mm-hmm.
You have this like microcosm of direct competition that's really telling for how people structure offers and everything. And so the first 30 pages, 40, no, let me see here, 100 pages, the first 100 pages of that talks way more about how to do marketing well than it does how to necessarily do PPC marketing. It's been fantastic. I've loved it. I've worn out pencils just scribbling
Yeah.
and rewording stuff on there. So
Wow.
those would be 2 big ones. I'll give you one more.
Mm.
Culture Code is one of my favorite culture creation books for a business. So Culture Code has been huge, and its sweeping conclusion is that the success of an organization is directly related to the safety that the members of that organization feel. Would chew on that for a while, because
That's
it
good.
yeah, a lot of us think of like the football, I always think of the old football coach, the opposite of that, of like, the mean old coach kind of situation. And that's what gets the best performance out of people. And I think data is starting to suggest that that's not a consistent method for success. As a matter of fact, the ability to take risks safely in your company is going to lead to a lot more success. So that one's a great one too.
Ooh. Okay, I'm sure everybody is going, wow. I know I am, and wow is all I can say.
Yeah.
Except I'd have another question. Okay, now like looking back over everything, and we all
Yeah.
have this, and so I know this is a pretty safe question to ask, but it's usually one that's really important. And I just wonder, looking back over everything, what do you wish you had known when you got started?
Besides buying Bitcoin, uh, everybody's categorical answer right now is, oh, if I would have only known. What would if I wish I could have known? A couple of things I jumped to mind to me. One, I think I wish I would have implemented core values and a business system kind of earlier.
Mhm.
And so that would be fantastic. I wish so. I thought I knew this, but I totally underestimated the power of staffing your weaknesses. So I heard an entrepreneur that I really respect. One time he described it so beautifully. He said, to build a successful business, you have to be able to sell your product and staff your weaknesses.
Mhm.
And it's kind of really that simple. So I'll say this: you have to be able to sell your product long enough to be able to afford to staff your weaknesses. And so that's the key hurdle at first. That's kind of tough for folks, but I'll never forget when. So I'm not a high detail guy, and true to a podcast sort of situation, I'm very classic visionary type. I get energized by ideas, and I have low follow through. So I know this about myself. It's taken a long time to really understand. I used to make sales. It drove my last boss crazy. I used to make sales and then I wouldn't send the invoice. So like 2 or 3 weeks would go by and I wouldn't send the invoice. And I'd be like, why won't I just send the invoice? You know, when you're going through that discovery of like what you're bad at, like listen to yourself, like
Yeah.
just listen. I made the sale and the exciting part of it was done. It was over for me. And now all that was left was the hard work of like, oh, I got to put together the details, make sure the invoice is right, send it off. They might say no, they might not like it, they might be surprised by something. All of the fear that we feel with
Uh-huh.
that moment like comes in, and that's not shiny, that's not fun anymore. And so what I know now is that I have a high propensity to quick start, a very low propensity to follow through. And I had to hack myself. As a matter of fact, I made it kind of one of the cornerstones that I would talk to people about because I knew this weakness in me. I had to hack myself through that. And so what I've discovered, this is all leading up to like one of the big things that I discovered, and I wish I would have known earlier, and I
Mhm.
wish I would have put it in place earlier, is that somebody else's strength is your weakness.
Yes.
Somebody, right? Somebody else, believe it or not, somebody else loves to do the thing that you hate.
Mhm.
And so if you are the person that's like, I am your executor, I am the like, give me a lot of people who are great at their professions are this way. That's like, you are good at executing the product because that's where your strength is. You are not great and gifted at selling it, or you're not great and gifted at what's coming, big vision sort of ideas. And so your temptation is going to be to hire somebody who's like you. That's our temptation, right? You meet somebody, hey, we get along so well, or we do this sort of thing, and it's because you're the same in some of those areas. I'm speaking generally here,
Mhm.
um, but I was blown away when I discovered how much people love to do the part that I hate. And once I let that happen, once I like let that go, my satisfaction went through the roof. I could not perceive that somebody else was like, this is what I love. Stop taking away the thing that I love.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
what became possible for my company completely changed once I understood that. So it took two companies and 10 years to figure that part out, just how powerful it would be.
Yeah. And I want to flip that also. More than likely, that person really, I hate to say it this way, they really do not like what you do so well. So
Right.
they're really happy to be on a part of a team where they have that other person that is the visionary, that is the one that's always learning and finding the next steps and will dare to take it, but then also will trust them to do the follow up. So I love how
Yeah.
teams, that's the beauty of teams. And I think that's really the secret behind your company, to be real, because
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it's understanding that we're all unique, but at scale, we're
Yeah.
also a type, which
Yeah.
is it's fascinating, right? To be
Yeah.
like, you're 100% uniquely created, but at the
Uh-huh.
same time, if you get 1,000 of us in a room, you're gonna find at least 10 of them that you look and be like, oh my gosh, this is like talking to a mirror,
Yeah.
you know? And so you think of all the things like a good system that works together has parts that complement are strong where others are weak. And yet, when it comes to the human component,
Mhm.
we have the hardest time understanding that somebody else is going to be really good at something that you're not. And yeah. And so once you kind of figure that out to be like, oh my gosh, I need to staff my weaknesses. And it's not a cliche. It's
Mhm.
if you do that part right, you'll start to go, wow, I had no idea this is possible. The other thing too, last thing with that, core values, even if you do that part right, if you vet the skill set, because I'm talking about skill set fit, that's where core values gives you that kind of overarching sense of team chemistry. How are we going to know to work well together beyond the skill stuff? And that's where core
Mhm.
values really gives you that point.
Wow. And I do want to kind of tap into this too. You even took this into your clients and finding your best client along these
Yeah.
same ways. That's to me revolutionary. That really, at first I had a resistance. You probably saw it a little
Yeah.
because I'm like, I love
That's right.
everybody. But then
I
to
remember.
be real,
Yeah.
walking back into my business, and
Yeah.
seeing how God had brought me into, I would say, even a more narrow place than before. I can't tell you the number of times I've thought about, the blessing you gave me of letting me help with hiring in particular, but also in the sales,
Yeah.
and how you stretched me and realizing that, that it's all about our core values, even finding and having a great working relationship with those we serve. That to me blew me
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Cindy, I believe you helped me create this too. We have a thing that we call the lead score.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the questions of the lead score, I mean, it seems weird to think like, hey, I'm going to evaluate people who want to do business with us and control that from a cultural perspective. Now, some businesses don't have that. I mean, if you run a coffee shop, you get whoever walks through the door. There's no cultural fit lead scoring sort of thing that you can do there. But for service businesses, especially where you're trying to build a long-term relationship with somebody, um, yeah, it makes a significant difference. And one of the things that we would do as part of our lead score is just vet somebody against our core values. So it wasn't the only factor, but we could see those, and it was very clear. It was very cool because you could see where it's like, hey, we have somebody who's not a core values fit, and they're also not a budget fit. And when you stack those two things together, you can literally predict this is going to go poorly. Even if they say yes, they'll probably say yes to us, and we'll kind of feel like we have to serve them, but we can already tell like this is not going to be a fit. What's beautiful about that is that you then have a good logical reason for agreeing up front as to, hey, we know this is why this is going to be a bad fit. And there's some of them where you take on bad fits. You know they're going to be bad fits, but if everything you're taking on is a bad fit, then your team can literally predict here's exactly where the conflicts are going to arrive. And we still have some relationships and everything
Hmm.
that have been, budget fits and whatnot. We know we're trying our best to serve where we can, but we know long term we're going to be outside of your core value fit here, on some of these things. So
Wow.
it's really powerful.
I love it. And, like I said, one of the things, where I've brought it into my business, and just to throw this out real quick, is, one of my core values is always learning and growing.
Yeah.
And, I know that if, it's nothing against anybody who doesn't want to do it at the same level, but there are people that I believe go to a long-term level that are really happy in my business and with my services, because they are learning and growing, and they get that I may fail, I may not
Mhm.
know things, but I am going to find the person that's great at it, put them on the mic. I am going to keep
Yeah.
growing myself, and there's a confidence there that we're on journey together. And so that's one of
Right.
mine personally, and I learned that really strong working with you. So, and there's a lot of other
Good.
applications, you guys. But anyway, okay, so if as we wrap up, tell us, like, if there was something that you just want to share, like if they only got one thing from you today, what would be
Yeah.
that one thing you'd want to leave us with?
Oh man.
I know that's a
Um,
hard question.
here's what I'd say. I'd say the core value thing is probably the biggest, but
Yeah.
since we've spent so much time on that, um, let me go maybe a little bit of a different direction with this.
Okay.
And so leave one last nugget for everybody. And that would be when you are looking to do your online marketing as a whole, we have a method over here that we're trying to create this or whatnot, but it's the lens that I see this through. We call it the TOT method: traffic, offer, and trust method. And what that means is traffic on the front end is anywhere that you're getting visitors, you're getting eyeballs, and your Instagram account has a traffic source. People are coming from predictable places. So start to view the internet as an accumulation of traffic sources.
Hmm.
People don't just come from anywhere, and they come from very specific funnels. Now there's a lot of them. There's a lot of variability inside of those funnels, but like Google is a funnel. Your Facebook people behave differently than your Instagram people,
Hmm.
and they behave differently than your LinkedIn folks. So start to think about your marketing as traffic sources. Where are my visitors come from? You might have a network group. So Cindy, you've got a podcast, right? There's a different kind of engagement that come from those folks. So once you have that, once you get traffic sources, make sure you get Google Analytics on your site, learn how to use it, learn how to read it, because every single day people get in there and they see like, oh, I've got like 5 to 7 visitors or 10 visitors a day. And it's like, oh, that's not much traffic. I'm like, man, you need a community of like 100 or 200 people that are dedicated, and you can build. I mean, I've built most of my company off of a single network of 70 people. Like,
Right.
that's huge. And so you don't need mountains of traffic. But once you have traffic sources, then the offer, what you are offering them, becomes what's the fundamental promise that you're making to them, and then what are the reasons that they should trust you. If you can, that's the TOT method, kind of and all three of those can be optimized. So when people say traffic, when people call me and they're like, hey man, I need more SEO, or I need to like optimize my SEO, what they're asking me for is an increase of traffic. So that's all SEO is. I can get you more visitors from Google. What they're assuming is that the offer and the trust factors are also going to be optimized as well. People don't know that they're asking for that, but they really are, because without the offer improving and without the trust factors giving people confidence, nobody's going to convert on whatever their actual goal is. And so, so all three of those areas can be optimized. Think about your offer, right? Find out what your traffic sources are. Think about your offer related to those. People who are coming from Google might be cold traffic coming from nowhere. Their only visit might be to one of your blog posts, but they're there for a specific reason. So the offer for that person needs to be unique to them. It needs to be customized. It needs to be fulfilling a value. And they're there to try to solve a problem, try to solve their problem. The more often you could do that, they will reward you with their attention, which is what we're after. And the last thing I'll say is the trust factors, reviews, good branding, great design, testimonials, case studies. Don't undervalue any of that stuff in a world that, like, the internet's getting noisier. And so as the internet gets noisier, verifiable places that people can put a hunch of good quality those are trust assets. So great images that describe a product or actually demonstrate the product's viability are rare. Stock images are all over the place. And so you might look at your offer and think, well, I've got a nice stock image. Well, it's like, that's as trustable as you've taken care to make sure that your design looks okay, looks good. But it doesn't give any more value than that. Like, that's the value, and it looks nice. But after that, we have a lot of trust to build that your product and service is actually sufficient. So,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so
good.
yeah, that'll revolutionize your marketing thought process if you start to think in those terms. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of marketing and being out there, and of course, you guys now know you can trust Tyler. How can people connect with you, Tyler? I mean,
yeah.
because you have many things you're doing.
Yeah, I think the best way is go to conversionfirstmarketing.com. And
Mhm.
that's our company website, which that's going to be the best. There's a conversionfirstmarketing.com/connect or the contact us page. Either one of those will get a message directly to me and my team. And we check that every day. I am not as active on like a Facebook Messenger. And so people try to connect with me socially, and I see it a week later and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. So yeah, go to conversionfirstmarketing.com and go ahead and contact us. That comes direct to me and my team.
Okay, well, you guys definitely connect. If your business is really ready to take that next step in your web design, your SEO, maybe you're needing a company that you can trust. I cannot tell you how much I support Conversion First Marketing. I've worked with them. I know what they've done behind the scenes, and I can't give a higher recommendation myself. You guys, thank you. And thank you, Tyler, for joining me today. It
My
is
pleasure.
again a great delight. And you guys make plans to join me each and every week. We come on every single week with new, fresh content. You can find me at all your podcast places. Just look for The Cindy Rushton Show and connect with me online. I am online at cindyrushton.com and the cindyrushtonshow.com. I'm at all your social media. And you guys, I love moments like this. And I hope that this has really brought great value to you, because my heartbeat is to empower and equip you as you reach the world with your message. And so make plans to join me again next week. If, hey, you want some binge worthy content, go check me out on all your podcast places. Well, you guys have a great week, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Thanks.